This is a TalkStation original podcast.
On this week's episode of the Paper Boys podcast, Zach Nally and I interviewed David Perry and Andrew Gurley. The Croatan coaches talk about the 25-year history of the school and its development as one of the top athletic programs in the state. It all starts now on the Paper Boys podcast. Hello and welcome to the Paper Boys podcast. I'm JJ Smith.
And I'm Zach Nally.
We're reporters with the Carteret County News-Times. We're joined, as always, by our producer, Ross Caraway. And this week, we are joined by Croatan people because we realize this is episode 17. Is that right?
That's 18.
18. And we really haven't done much on Croatan.
We got to get some Cougars on here.
Yeah, we've been very east and west heavy, so we got some Cougars on today. We've got former athletic director and football coach and current wrestling coach, David Perry. Hello, Mr. Perry.
Hey, hello, guys.
And we have current football coach and current basketball coach, Andrew Gurley. Hello, Mr. Gurley.
Hey, guys.
So, Croatan celebrated its 25th anniversary this past school year, and so that's a mile marker. And so we definitely wanted to talk some Croatan, being they've hit that, and also doing pretty well these days, winning some Wells Fargo's Cups like it's their job. 3 out of the last, I can't even keep track anymore. It's 3 years in a row and 4 out of the last 5. And if you're not familiar with the, and just a couple points away from winning 5 in a row. And if you're not familiar with the Wells Fargo Cup, that's basically judging you as a entire athletic program. So Croatan is the best athletic program in the state in their division. It was 2A, then they moved up to 3A, and they're like, big deal, we'll just win that too. Who cares? So David has been there from day one. He was the AD at the start. He was the football coach at the start. He was the wrestling coach at the start. Andrew showed up a year after the school opened as a student and a football player, and has only been away for a few years to go to college, and then came back and was a teacher and coach. So we thought, who better to have than these two guys on? So we'll start with you, David. Tell us, you grew up a Morehead City kid?
Yeah, I grew up in Morehead City and went to West Carteret High School and played football and baseball and wrestled. And then went to NC State. And when I came back, West Carteret didn't have an opening at the time. This was in the early 90s. So I ended up teaching at Jacksonville High School, and then after 3 years there, an opening came up at West, and so I went to West, and then 5 years after being there, Croatan opened.
And played football with, were you there with Vaughn Johnson?
He was a senior when I was a freshman.
Okay.
And then we played together at NC State my freshman year. He was a senior at State.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
And Roy Heverly, was he at West when you were out there?
Yep, we graduated together. Roy was a 4-time placer, 2-time state champion. He was by far the best wrestler at West when I was there.
You went to West at a time when there was some talent out there, didn't you?
Yeah, we had quite a few guys do well. We had some good basketball players and obviously wrestlers and football players. So yeah, that was a good time.
And wrestled under the legend, Gordy Patrick.
Yeah, Mr. Patrick was he was the wrestling name in the East back when wrestling was first getting its start in North Carolina. He won. I think my senior year he won Coach of the Year in North Carolina for all divisions, and he was pretty well known. Actually, he was inducted in the Hall of Fame prior to my induction.
When did you know you wanted to be a teacher and a coach?
I think it was in high school. My football coach, George Varick, was a pretty big inspiration for me. He just made football enjoyable. He made it something that excited kids to want to be out for the sport, and I just made up my mind that I wanted to return the favor.
And Andrew, how about you? Where'd you grow up?
So we grew up in Clayton, North Carolina, Johnston County. We actually moved here right before my freshman year. So I went to Clayton Middle School, 6th through 8th grade, and had all intentions of going to Clayton High School, playing for Gary Fowler there, and even went to some spring workouts, during my 8th grade year at Clayton High School, started lifting weights and everything. About that beginning of that summer, my dad said, hey, I got a job at the beach, so we're moving to the beach in Carteret County. And didn't know much about Croatan High School at the time because it was only a year old. Once we started looking at, houses and places to live, and knew we were going to be in the lines of Croatan High School, started learning a little bit more. There just wasn't that much out there, yet. But yeah, right before my freshman year, we moved up here and went to Croatan.
Did you get the vibe when you started at Croatan that was a whole different deal, and it was the new kid on the scene? Yeah,
Clayton High School. Obviously you got all this rich tradition, there. Both my parents went to Clayton High School, and so growing up, I just heard so much. I went to Clayton High School games. We pretty much went to every home game there at the time, and they won a state title in '88 with Coach Fowler and Glenn Nixon, who was my dad's coach. I just hear about these guys growing up, and then obviously when you go to try to find things out about Croatan, there's not much out there, and we could still, there was still a little bit of construction going on at the school when we got there, and we just knew that it was new on the scene and didn't know much about it. But I tell you, when we got there, we were, I think, a couple of weeks. They had already started football practice. I think at least 1 or 2 weeks into the season. As a freshman, you don't really think about things like that, like, wow, this is a new school and all that. I just was ready to get out there and show what I can do and be a part of the team, and didn't really think a whole lot about, what was new and what was old and things like that. I just wanted to get out there and get started.
Well, if you're going to be a new kid, right, and come into a new school, it certainly helps that everybody else is fairly new as well. Especially if these kids are coming over from I guess Newport Middle wasn't around then, so Broad Creek Middle, and some kids are going to West, some kids are going to this new school Croatan, and so it's not like everybody there grew up together and knew who they were going to end up with when they got there. So pretty good on that respect.
Yeah, and especially being a freshman, coming in. I think if I was maybe my sophomore year, junior year, probably would have been a lot different. But yeah, being a freshman, it was kind of going to be. I didn't know that many guys there anyway. I guess I would have known the other incoming freshmen. But yeah, Coach Perry, and the staff at the time. They made it a super easy transition. I think it was because, like you said before, everything was pretty new, and as a program, they were still, I guess, finding their way in a sense. So, after a week or so, I felt like I fit right in, and wasn't really that big of a difference. Wasn't that hard of a change, I felt like.
When did you know you wanted to be a teacher and a coach?
Well, Coach Perry mentioned his football coach, and I'd be, I definitely, I can't go giving this explanation without mentioning him. He was a big part in that decision, obviously. I think I gotta say it was in high school as well. I went to college as a math major, so I definitely think I had that on my brain, that I wanted to be a coach, because, obviously the best way to get your foot in the door as a coach is to be a teacher. So, I think in high school as well, Coach Perry definitely had a hand in that, wanted as an impact on me wanting to be a coach, and, just being around the game, of football, I just loved it. And I guess, the teaching part of it, the coaching part of it, that just came, the more I knew that that's what I was wanting to do. But yeah, I think initially, just with the coaches I was around and the mentors I had, obviously that was their area of expertise. So, you're going to have a tendency to follow, that path as well. So, going into college and deciding what I wanted to do, it just kind of felt like a no-brainer.
Did your parents or grandparents coach high school sports at all?
So my dad coached me, growing up through the rec leagues, but no, none of my immediate relatives did.
Well, and the reason I ask is because for those listening, your sister Lindsay Bach now coaches volleyball and softball, and so you would think that coaching must run in the family of these two siblings. Are out here coaching their heads off. You're coaching 2 sports out of the year, and you spend a lot of your time dedicated to being there in the classroom and in these athletic facilities with these kids. It clearly has meant a lot to both of you, and I wondered where that came from for the both of you.
Yeah, I mean, you got me like racking my brain right now, but no, I mean, nobody in our family or immediate family. Like I said, our dad, my dad coached me in Little League baseball, coached me in like Pop Warner football. He was an assistant coach helping out, and I'm sure he had a hand in some things my sister did too. But no, we the influence there definitely from coaches like Coach Perry. I think of Terry Lewis. Coach Lewis had a big impact on me as well. Doug Schaefer. All those guys. As a group, definitely gave me a lot of inspiration there when it comes to coaching.
How about you, David? Did anybody in your family coach or teach?
No, actually, I was the first for my family to get a college degree. So
Wow.
I was the first one to teach and first one to coach.
Andrew, you went on to play football at Methodist. How important was it to continue your career in college?
It was a great experience. I mean, and I like it. I mean, now it's great. I can relate to guys that I coach that have an aspiration to go on and play at the next level. I mean, kind of as someone that's experienced that, I feel like I have a lot of great advice to give them. Obviously, Methodist is a Division III school, and a lot of people look at Division III like, hey, that's not, they're not on TV. You don't hear about them. But, I mean, I tell our guys all the time, guys, college football is college football. I mean, yes, there's different levels. I mean, we weren't up there with the Penn States and UNCs of the world or anything, but I had an amazing experience. I played for, a great coaching staff. Again, a group of guys that continued to help mold me and kind of just further, I guess, made me decide to coach as well. But yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Coach Perry had a big part of that too. I remember him and I sitting there, making scout tapes, talking about VHS. I mean, that was even before guys really traded DVDs at the time. I mean, we were making VHS scout tapes and sending them off, and he would send them off to school for me. And, we'd go on different trips, to visit schools, and he had a big hand in that. And, yeah, it was definitely a great experience, looking back now as a coach. It definitely gave me some insight now with ways to relate to the players that I currently coach.
Hi, folks. Bob Lowry here, and this episode of the Paper Boys Podcast is brought to you by the Carteret County Speedway.
Carteret County Speedway's Day of Destruction this Saturday at 2 p.m. the 28th. Popular events, smashing, bashing, and crashing. Trunk or treat. Costume contest with $1,000 in cash and prizes up for grabs. Bombers, total destruction, track corner, bobblehead, Bob Lowry Racing, and more. Tickets $15, kids 10 and under free. Military discount with ID, VIP, trackside, camping, and Moonshiners Restaurant. All at Carteret County Speedway. Day of Destruction this Saturday. Trunk or treat at 2, destruction at 3. Details on Facebook. Tickets at CarteretSpeedway.com.
This is Daniel Barrow, the head football coach of the West Carteret Patriots, and you're listening to the Paper Boys Podcast.
David, I'll ask you the same thing as Andrew. You continued your career at State. How important was it for you to continue to play ball?
I think for kind of different reasons than Andrew. I got a chance to play at some smaller schools and made the opposite decision of Andrew. I decided to go to NC State and walk on, and I think I thought I was better than I really was. Playing Division I football, there aren't a lot of kids that are at that level. And, I got there and after a year of playing got a little discouraged because, I could kind of see the writing on the wall that I probably wasn't going to be playing a whole lot at NC State. And so I kind of regretted not going to a smaller school where I would have played a lot. But it gave me a good perspective, when I talked to kids at Croatan because, as far as I know, during my time here, and Andrew probably will agree, we haven't had really a legit D1 football player. We just don't tend to get those kinds of kids at Croatan. And so it's always been good for me to be able to say, look, if I had it to do over again, I would have gone to a small school where I could have played and continued my career, instead of choosing to try to go somewhere that I probably really didn't belong. And so I think in that sense, it helped me. I'm sure with Andrew, all of us want to go play somewhere big, a Division I school. but I'm sure we had that talk about how, Andrew was good enough to play D2 or D3 football, which is probably where I was at as well. And he ended up doing it and had a great experience and, just loved college football, whereas I kind of had a disappointing experience.
Well, what did you major in at State?
It's funny. I started out in math like Andrew and ended up switching into history and got my degree in history at NC State. And I have a minor in math, so I teach a little math here and there.
When you're at State and you're thinking you're going to be a high school teacher and a high school coach, is West the dream job to go back to the alma mater?
It was, yeah. That was. I really loved my experience at West. I had a great high school experience, good coaches, good teachers, and my total plan was to go back to West, and made it back there. But then when they built Croatan, it was an opportunity to come be a head coach in football, which was kind of my dream job. So I had to take the move.
How about you, Andrew? Was Croatan the dream job, the alma mater?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I interviewed at a couple other places. I remember I interviewed at Northwood High School, and they actually offered me the job. Same day I got job offer down here. And obviously I didn't pick Northwood, but funny story, my freshman year, I called my parents and begged them for me to switch my major to PE. Said, all my buddies are PE majors, can I switch? And they're like, you're never going to find a job. It's so much harder to find a job teaching PE than it is math. Right. There's a lot more math teachers at a school than there are PE. So I stay with it. I graduate with my math degree, 4 years. I get out of college. I come to Croatan High School, interview with Mr. Bottoms, and he says, well, you know what, Andrew, unfortunately, we don't have a math opening, but I have a PE opening. Like, of course you do. I started teaching at Broad Creek, but our principal there, she let me coach at Croatan. So I coached, football, basketball, and track at Croatan. But my first 8 years of teaching, I was at Broad Creek teaching math. So, but yeah, Croatan was definitely, it's where I wanted to be. Obviously, my family was there. Just had a great experience. I wanted to go coach with Coach Perry. That was the goal the whole time. Definitely.
David, was it weird when you're in college and you're thinking West is a dream job and that's where you want to be, and then the opportunity comes to Croatan? Was that a tough decision?
Not really. I mean, at the time, we're starting a young family and really needed. When I took the job at Croatan, prior to that, I was still waiting tables at the Channel Marker restaurant on the beach to try to make ends meet. And to get a chance to come to Croatan and get 2 extra months pay in the summer and a double the supplement for football, it was pretty much a no-brainer. Plus the excitement of a brand new school, and you get to pick out the uniforms and buy the equipment I want, and I mean it was a great opportunity.
Well, and earlier Andrew mentioned some of the coaches that had a big influence on him while he was playing there at Croatan, and I imagine that's a staff that you helped put together. When I guess Mr. Bottoms came, or who superintendent at the time came to you and said, let's give you an opportunity to go over to Croatan. Did you have a chance to pick out your own assistants?
A little bit. I had Doug Schaefer applied for the job the same time I did for the Croatan head coaching job, and so I knew Doug wanted to come. We were good friends, and we worked with Mike Bradley at West Carteret. And so when I got the job, I went to Doug right away and asked him if he wanted to come with me. And I knew defense was his passion. I needed a defensive coordinator, and so he jumped on board. And then I had talked to Terry Lewis, who at the time was the head football coach at Broad Creek. And Terry had also said, he'd love to come to Croatan. His kind of dream was to get back to high school and run the weight training program. And so I had those two kind of in my back pocket, and I knew Mr. Bottoms respected both of them. After that, it was kind of, you got to take what you get. It's a brand new school, and we're trying to hire teachers, and a lot of them. So I got Bobby Christopher, who was a math teacher, and Bobby came and helped us. And Scott Kaufman was, I don't remember what Scott taught, but he was another young teacher. And so the first year there were 5 of us, and we started the program.
And I'm curious, not only are you putting together a staff of coaches, but you're wondering who's going to play on this team. And when they build a school like this, obviously you're going to take some kids from the school you're already at or other schools nearby, as they redraw these districts and find out who's going to be on this team? Did you have a good sense of who was going to end up going over to Croatan, or was it mostly just kind of, tryouts? It was all a bunch of new faces.
We had, some idea. We had a group of, I want to say there were 7 or 8 kids that had played for us at West that, we knew were coming to Croatan. And we went ahead and got information, from Terry that helped out on the rising, freshman from Broad Creek. And so he had contact information for them. So we had a pretty good idea. I think the first year, I want to say we had maybe 40 kids, 38, 40 kids, and we only had one team that year. So, so we had a pretty good idea who was coming out.
You mentioned earlier, I'm sure the county picked Croatan as the name. It could have been Newport or...
You're about to ask the question I want to know.
Or Ocean or whatever. I'm sure you didn't have any stake in that, David. But Cougars and Black and Gold. Did you have any decision making there?
No, I'm pretty sure Mr. Bottoms, actually the AD, the original AD for the first 5 years or 7 years actually was Lee Davis. And Lee, I think he and Mr. Bottoms made a lot of those decisions. I definitely think it was more Mr. Bottoms than anything.
Oh, if not to take any thunder away from those two gentlemen, but if you could have picked, what do you think you'd have picked, David?
Well, it's kind of hard to argue with Cougars now.
Yeah, right now it's been 25 years.
So long.
Yeah.
So,
I always thought
the first few years, we would go places and they would call us Croatan and Croatia, and we got called pretty much everything the first couple of years. And then finally now people kind of know it's Croatan.
I will give him credit. Croatan is inventive. You could have easily just named it after the place, but Croatan is different. But I always thought Bogue Sound would have sounded cool. Bogue Sound High School. That definitely sounds like a beach high school.
Yeah, definitely.
The Bogue Sound Beach Boys.
Yeah, the Bogue Sound Surfers or the Bogue
There
Sound
you go.
Barracudas or something. Had blue and silver or something.
Not the Croatan Crawfish. Nothing like that.
The Crabbers, like the Virginia Beach crowd.
You're getting to those East Carteret type names.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right. And first year, there's no seniors, right?
Yeah, we had 5 juniors the first year, and then everybody else were sophomores and freshmen, mostly freshmen. We probably had, of the 38 kids, I'd say probably 20 of them were freshmen. We had a pretty good freshman class. Those kids ended up, their senior year, we were pretty good. We had a good group of linemen and a couple really good skill players. We just, the problem was we were in such a tough conference. I tell people now, if they did the rankings the way they do them now, the first, that senior class, that first senior class that was here all 4 years, I mean, we probably would have been in the top 15 in the East. But we finished 6th in our conference. But our conference was just so good back then.
That first year, was it a full slate of schedule? Was it a full slate of games and JV and varsity, or was everyone pretty much on the same squad?
Everybody's on the same squad, and we played a mixed schedule. We played 4 varsity teams and 6 JV teams.
Wow.
What was the theory by not having seniors at the school the first year and just not to make somebody go from one school to the next in their senior year?
Yeah. They didn't want to force kids to have to, go to Croatan that had been at West for 3 years.
Right.
They thought, that would be hard on those kids. The funny thing is that we had quite a few kids that lived like in Emerald Isle that were seniors that would have loved to have gone to Croatan. I mean, Brian Ayer was one of, was a really good wrestler for me, and he would have loved to come to Croatan his senior year.
Oh, so they just weren't allowed to come as seniors?
No seniors. Yeah.
Oh, bummer. You're looking around at some of those kids like, I wish you guys could come with me, but you cannot.
Right. Yeah, I had 2. Well, I had Rex Reese was a state champion, would have probably, possibly have come, and Ryan Ayer, he ended up finishing 3rd. So those 2, would have been a nice addition.
And back in that day, who was it, David? It was Clinton, East Duplin. Who else was in your conference?
Wallace Rose Hill, Southwest Onslow.
Hurts.
Richland.
Yeah, the East Carteret was in there. I don't think who else that first year.
Yeah.
I know the year I was talking about, there were five teams finished ahead of us in the conference. All 5 of those won their first round football game. All 4 of the 5 won in the quarterfinals. And then so all that was left in the East and 2A that year were 4 teams from the East Central. And then they beat each other. And then the team that won was Clinton, I think, that year, or maybe in Southwest. Whoever it was won the state championship.
Wow. All right, we'll
only one East Central team lost in the playoffs to somebody. No East Central team lost to anybody but another East Central team.
Wow.
Jeez.
I'm Ryan Kelly,
I'm Lynn Schultz.
and we're the hosts of the Senior Moment podcast.
Each week we bring you conversations with experts right here in our community about the common and uncommon challenges facing our aging population and caregivers.
We discuss the challenges of caring for a loved one with dementia, as well as the importance of health planning, family history, and much more.
Join us every week for Senior Moment, streaming now on Spotify, YouTube, and at CarolinaCoastOnline.com.
Every school has kind of a reputation, a vibe. What was it starting out at Croatan, David? What kind of school did you think it was going to be?
I mean, when we started out, everybody thought we were going to be kind of the ugly stepsister to West Carteret, that, we were going to be the school that was never going to be able to compare to West, and, it was going to be hard for us academically to do as well as West had always done, and athletically we were never going to have enough kids in our school to be able to compete with West. And it's funny to look back now and see how much things have changed from what people thought in the beginning.
How about you, Andrew? What did you feel like the reputation and the vibe of the school was?
I mean, you definitely could sense that it was a new school. I feel like my senior year, I think was the first year that we had made the playoffs, my senior year. And you think about that, and, that's a big deal. I mean, it took, to my senior year, but I mean, that was like, to know that was the first year in school history. Thinking back now, I mean, obviously that's a pretty big deal. It was definitely a lot of firsts. I mean, it was a lot of firsts for us, as not just a football program, but all the other sport athletic programs. And, when you look back at it, everything was just having to be built from the ground up. And it's just interesting, thinking back now, how everything was just new, and there was a lot of unknowns. So it's pretty neat to think about it now. Hard to believe that's 25 years later, but you definitely got that vibe that everything was just, a lot of firsts, a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncharted territory we were going through as a not just football, but any sport program.
Some really clean locker rooms too, I bet.
Oh yeah, definitely not that way now. No.
Everything fresh and sparkly and new. And I started a new school, a new middle school, and I remember just noticing the difference between going from Broad Creek to Newport Middle and how everything was just brand new, and that was pretty cool. But I know nowadays it's all done on social media, but even back then, kids were talking trash before games, and that's just you kind of repping your school a little bit. That's got to be hard when you're a brand new school and you don't really have anything or much historical to kind of lean on.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you're just kind of starting from the ground up. I think that's something that really didn't, I guess, affect me that much, because I was new anyway. I was the new guy at the new program, so I was just, just trying to, I guess, put my fingerprints on the team, whatever way I could. So I don't know if that really affected me any certain way. Obviously, the older you get, junior and senior year, you kind of develop a little bit more, I guess, standing room within your team, and then you start to learn a little bit more about the teams in your conference and teams you're playing. And I mean, I didn't know anything. I mean, obviously, Croatan-West rivalry, it's something much bigger now. Back then, I mean, it wasn't really that big of a thing. A lot of time, senior year, I remember, those rivalries with West and East and Swansboro. They had definitely started, gathering some momentum there. And, just pretty neat now thinking about it, building those rivalries that now you look at it, there's no doubt, that's teams you circle those dates on your calendar. Back then it was all so new, but didn't really have anything to go off of then.
David, what were the challenges of starting a football program and a wrestling program from scratch?
Football was more difficult, mainly just because you got to get the weight training program started, and we're a school that traditionally we don't have as much speed as a lot of the local schools that are successful, like a Southwest or a Havelock or New Bern. So we knew if we were going to have any success, we were going to have to get bigger and stronger, and so. The big thing, I think, was we were lucky Doug Schaefer and Terry Lewis were both in the weight room, and so they just, that was our focus. We were going to get big and strong, and we were going to try to use that to our advantage. In wrestling, it was a little easier because, I had a few kids coming over that were fairly talented. Carmen and Nikki Mercantini were pretty good little wrestlers. And, in wrestling, it's size on size. So, you got a kid that's 106 pounds wrestling, and the other kid's 106 pounds. So if you do a good job getting them ready, then you can be competitive. So we were competitive. I mean, we didn't lose but a single match. The third year I was here, we lost to Southern Vance in the it's either Eastern Finals or regional semifinals. But I mean, within 3 years we were already pretty competitive. Football took a little longer.
What was it wrestling, or was it another sport that? Did you recall any moment, any school year where you had some success, whether it was wrestling or some other sport, and you thought, oh, okay, maybe we got something here. Maybe this athletic program can compete on a statewide level.
It's weird. I mean, up until I became AD, we had a little bit of an identity in wrestling because we'd had success there, and our cross-country teams were pretty solid. But, we weren't really viewed much as an athletic team, or school. I mean, I can even remember, kids talking about, how we weren't any good at athletics. And even after we, the last couple of years I was AD, we were in the top 3 twice for the Wells Fargo Cup. And I remember kids still saying, we're not very good in athletics. I was thinking, I don't think they understand the concept of a total athletic program. But yeah, I mean, we got some good hires, brought in some good coaches, Coach Slater, and then obviously, Coach McBride came back, and Coach Gurley came back, and Coach Rigsby came back. And, we started bringing in some good coaches. We got Coach Bolfer to come here, and before you know it, we're winning Wells Fargo Cups.
Yeah, I remember I started at the News Times in 2007, and 2000, I think about a year later, Croatan was named as one of the top schools in the country by U.S. News and World Report. I think they were just one of like 40-something schools in the state to get that designation, and that kind of became a thing. And I remember going to a football game, I don't know if it was that fall, maybe it was the fall of 2009, after the year afterwards, and just to build on David's point, I don't think the student body thought they were very good at sports, because I remember some of the signs up around the football field, something about something to the effect of we might not beat you tonight, but we have better SAT scores than you, and we're going to get in better colleges than you. It was kind of almost like a Duke vibe, and I felt like that was the reputation of Croatan for a number of years there, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, no doubt about it. We were known as the academic school. I mean, we were in the top 10. In the rankings for the state in academics, I don't know, for almost a decade. Even got as high as number 2 in the state one year. So I think people saw us as an academic school. And the thing I think, even though Coach Gurley and I are both football coaches and, we love football, we both admit that, if you look at total athletics and you realize that, we're really good in a lot of sports. I mean, our track programs, our swim program, our cross country, traditionally wrestling, our girls basketball has had some great seasons. There's a lot of sports that we've done really well in. Baseball's had some great seasons. The list goes on. Lacrosse obviously has been a good sport for us. But girls soccer, now boys soccer.
Keep on going.
So, we're good. We're good in a lot of things, but, what everybody wants to look at is, are you good in football and basketball? And if you're not good in football and basketball, then they think that means you're not good in athletics.
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point. The revenue sports make the headlines, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. David started out coaching the wrestling team in the first, about first 5 years. You're finishing like between 15th and 30th in the state, and then go on a 10-year run where it's top 5 just about every year. You finish second in 06. You finished second again in 09. You win back-to-back state titles in 10 and 11, both in the individual tournament and in the duels. Then you win another couple of individuals. I mean, you win. I finished second again in the state. You finished first, second. I mean, it was a nice little talent cycle that came through there at Croatan, right?
Yeah, we were pretty lucky, and we had a real good coaching staff. Jerry Meany, who was here for a long time, brought a lot of knowledge, and Joe Blackwell, whose son was a 2-time state champion for us, and Chuck Colborn, who's still coaching football here. We had all those guys in wrestling, and you put together that kind of group coaching, and then you're bringing up kids from Broad Creek that are coached by Mike Whitley, and all of a sudden, we had for a while there, we had a train going, and we thought it would last forever, but that never happens. Even Alabama found that out this year.
And then, of course, Andrew Gurley, coaching football since David Perry retired, and he's been coaching girls basketball now for, 12 years, 13 years, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 13 this year coming up, 13 or 14.
And you've had some pretty big seasons yourself. Just like any basketball program, the ups and downs. And I'm looking between 2015 and 2020. Yeah, that spring 2021 when we had a shortened season, you all had some pretty remarkable seasons. I'll never forget that one graduating class with the 4 gals that did exceptionally well. And what's it been like to coach that program and watch them have their moments in the sun? And
yeah, I mean, it's funny. When I took over, I think it was 2010, 2011 season, I believe. I never even thought about coaching girls basketball. I got asked, in 07, my first year teaching. I really didn't plan on coaching basketball at all. But the head coach at the time for boys, needed a JV coach, and I played basketball in high school, but I never coached it, obviously. But I learned a lot those 2 years I did boys, and then that's when Dexter and Shannon Williams came in. My third year there, and they took over the boys program, and so that's when I started coaching girls, and coached 1 year as JV girls coach for Steve Yunt, and he retired the next year, and said, "Hey, I'm retiring. I'd love to leave it to you." And I said, "Well, that sounds like a plan." So, it's been great. Even when I took over football in 2018, after Coach Perry stepped down, I guess I had it in my mind, hey, if it's not this year, then probably soon I'm going to just step away from basketball and just focus on football. And I didn't want to be unfair to the athletes, whether it be the football players or the basketball players. But, here we are 5-6 years later, I'm still doing both. And I couldn't imagine not doing basketball as well as football. I mean, just the teams we've had, obviously the success that speaks for itself, but, just the love of the game that I've just grown to. I mean, I just genuinely, I've always had a love for football. That's always been a passion of mine, but I guess just, basketball has definitely been a sport that is just over the years, I've just grown to love more and more every year, and just being out there teaching and coaching. And, that's just been something I just can't imagine not doing, even though, 7-8 months out of the year, it's going to be tough, seeing my kids, seeing my wife, but I'm thankful to be able to include them in most of everything that I do with football and basketball, and just having them a part of it as much as possible. And, just like you say, just being a part of those kids' lives and just helping them any way I can. I can't imagine not doing that.
Andrew, you mentioned Steve Yount. They had some success when he was the coach there. What did you learn from him just that 1 year as an assistant under him?
Steve, the biggest thing with him is just because as a boys coach, obviously I'm seeing their success. They're getting third round, consistently. I think 2 years in a row, they reached the third, maybe fourth round. I can't remember. Coach Perry might know a little more than me, but you see their success, and you're just like, man, they must be doing just all this stuff and all just this complex stuff. They must run this complex offense. And just I think the biggest thing I learned from Steve is just keep it simple. Like, don't do something that the kids can't do. You know, when they're confident in what they're doing, they're going to play fast. And, you know, I sat down, you know, day one after he hired me as his JV girls coach, and I got a notebook and a pen, and I'm sitting ready, you know, I'm getting ready to write page after page of a playbook. And really, I mean, it was like, hey, you know, we do this when this happens, blah, blah, blah. That's pretty much it. I'm like, wait, what? And that was kind of the biggest thing that I noticed from him is it was just, hey, we're going to trust our athletes to make plays. And the rest is make sure we manage the game and call timeouts when we need to. And, you know, that was it. And it was just pretty cool to see him, you know, do things in practice, you know, pay attention to the little details. And then when you get in a game, it's like we don't have to have this exotic playbook. I mean, because they know exactly how to handle these different situations. And so that was pretty cool. You know, I obviously wish I could have been under his tutelage a lot longer than that. But, you know, I took a ton away from him that first year and, you know, obviously took that with me. And, I mean, there's still stuff that I remember he did that I do to this day, you know, with my teams. So I thought that was pretty neat. Definitely not something, you know, that you would expect, you know, as a young coach going into becoming a head coach. You know, what's that saying? Keep it simple, stupid. You know, don't make it tougher than it needs to be. So that was the number one thing I got from him.
I'll kind of wrap up with this question. I've heard a lot of coaches say over the years when they hang it up that you know, they spent more time with other people's kids than they did their own, and I think you two fall under that category. David, you were at one point you were the AD, you were the football coach, you were the wrestling coach, you were teaching history, not just history, but AP history. And Andrew, now you're coaching football. You go straight into basketball and being a teacher. And talk about the time commitment and just kind of the love you have to have for teaching and coaching and your school and your kids to be able to do what you all do. Start with you, David.
I think Andrew hit it on the head. You know, is you got to make your family part of it. You know, I mean, Julie was here at every, you know, game, and she ran my wrestling tournaments, and our kids were running around the field, you know, playing, and Kaylin was on the sidelines from the time she was probably 6-7 years old. She loved the football. So I think, you know, if you're going to make it work, then you've got to have a family that wants to be part of it. That's the hardest thing is, you know, I see young coaches that end up getting out of the sport that love it is they have, you know, a spouse that isn't in love with what they're doing, and it makes it hard. So that's probably the biggest thing is making your family part of it.
How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the only thing that can prepare you to be a head coach is being a head coach. I mean, there's no way you can like fully prepare for that as an assistant. I mean, you can have a general idea. And I was very lucky, you know, Coach Perry didn't mention this, but I think it was 2014, 15, you know, those couple of years there, he brought back, you know, Mike Bradley, Chris Rust, you know, some coaches that he had worked with in the past and brought them on staff for football those couple seasons. And I tell you, you know, working with them as well as Coach Perry and Coach Schaefer, Coach Lewis, I mean, they probably prepared me to be a head coach more than I could ever imagine, because you don't realize how much of a time commitment it is. I mean, obviously I tried to help Coach Perry out when I was an assistant as much as I could, and I'm thankful for the guys that I have now that help me out, because when you think about it, I mean, we don't have people that magically come out and paint your field for you and cut your grass and, you know, do all that and, you know, do the laundry and hang the uniforms back up. I mean, you're the one that's doing it. So it's definitely a big commitment, and I wouldn't do it if I didn't love what I'm doing and love my program and my school and the kids and coaches and the community. And I mean, I'll do it all for that. I mean, I do those things, but I don't really think about that I'm doing them. I don't ever say, I can't believe I have to do this, because I do it because I love it. And like you said, you know, putting your family, getting them involved as much as possible. I mean, that's number one for me. If I couldn't do that, I don't know if I would continue to coach. My wife keeps the scorebook for us at basketball games. My kids, they're all, you've seen them. They're all over the place, at games and stuff. And I just love having them out there. And I just want to involve them as much as I can because they're the reason I do it too. Is to support them and provide for them. And we're just, lucky as coaches being able to do what we love and be a part of a school that we love and get to be around people that we want to work with each day. So can't ask for a better situation than that.
And we started off talking about the Wells Fargo Cup, which basically is a competition of the overall athletic programs. And Croatan's now won it 3 years in a row, 4 in the last 5. The 1 year they didn't win it, they just lost by a few points, and that was the pandemic year. And I think you talked to a lot of people at Croatan, they think they'd have won that year too. And so we're talking about maybe 5 in a row. The county has won 16 state titles in the past 14 years. Croatan has accounted for 13 of those 16. The last 7 state titles won by a county team, Croatan's won all those since 2018. Of the 23 state runner-up finishes by county teams since 2002, Croatan's been responsible for 17. David, when you started out at Croatan High School, would you and Andrew, when you was as a student and a player, would y'all ever imagine Croatan? I'm sure you hoped, but would you ever imagine y'all would have had this kind of success? Start with you, David.
No, probably not. To be honest, my passion, was to win a state title in football or wrestling. I knew that, probably going to have a better chance in wrestling just because of the demographics, at Croatan. But, I always envisioned that if I worked hard enough, one day, one of my teams would win a state title. But I never envisioned that we would win state titles in, multiple sports and, win the Wells Fargo. My big goal for years when I was the AD was that we would not win the Wells Fargo, that we'd be in the top 5. That was my goal. And so the last couple of years I was here, we made it to the top 5, and I thought, man, that's amazing. We made the top 5 of the Wells Fargo. Little did I know after I retired, we'd win it 4 times.
How about you, Andrew, as a student and a player, and now seeing what it's doing now?
No, definitely not. Obviously you got goals and aspirations and things you want to accomplish. And like Coach said, we're focused on the sport that we're involved in, and it's just so cool to think about it. When you were mentioning that there about the different state champions and things like that, it's not just from one sport. It's spread out too. You got lacrosse involved now and cross country and, soccer with the boys winning a few years back. It's just so cool to see the different sports. Everybody's contributing. There might be one year where, football's contributed to the Wells Fargo points with how well we did, or girls basketball or volleyball. It's so neat to think about it as a collective group of coaches and athletes instead of just one group you can pinpoint it on. It's across the board. And when you look at that, it's mind-blowing to think that to have that kind of success, you've got to have it's hundreds of people that's involved with that, when you look at all the different sports. And so just to think about that and what was done, can't help but think that that's neat. Even if you're not a part of Croatan or never have, even an outsider looking in would be like, wow, that's quite a feat to accomplish. So it's very neat to be a part of it. Wouldn't trade it for anything.
Gentlemen, wrestling and girls basketball is going to be starting here in about a minute, so we'll see you out there soon enough. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks,